Welcome to the Global Glug, un podcast internacional sobre spirits dove condividiamo historias y tradizioni mainly in English con un toque de español, italiano y un accenno de français. Chin chin! Hello, welcome back to a new episode, the Global Glug. I'm Renato Molo, and today it's going to be an episode in English, but we are in Colombia today. I am with John Coffey, who lives in Cali. First of all, John, thank you very much for your time. How are you today?
Thanks, Renato. Very happy to be with you and with the listeners. I'm good, thank you. Todo bien en Cali.
Muy bien, todo bien aquí en Cartagena. It's really hot now, it's changing, it's getting warmer. But anyway, we are not talking about the weather today, we are talking about Viche. Viche is, when I started this podcast, my really very first episode was with Onesimo González Biojo. And we were just talking about Viche, how important it is, because we know that Colombia it's a bit complicated for distillation. There's still kind of a strong monopoly, which doesn't really allow to produce alcohol. So Viche was really something that I wanted to talk with an English speaker. So John, he's an insider, if we can say so. He's based in Cali. Can you maybe just to begin tell me a bit more about you, about your?
Sure.
You have been in Colombia for a while now. Can you maybe tell us?
I'm from Ireland. I came first to Colombia in 1996 to make a documentary in the southeast in Caquetá, in the province of Caquetá, about a group of European hippies who lived in the jungle and were protecting the jungle from incursions by drug growers and military. So I came during that period, very hot period, very difficult period in Colombia's history. I met a girl, now wife, 2 kids. We lived in Europe for a spell, in New York for 7 years, and then moved back to Colombia about 17 years ago. Mm-hmm. So my day job is in technology. I have a tech company, a software development company here in Colombia. And I met some people who were interested in Viche, and I became a partner in the company, and that's how I got involved in Viche. That's my kind of origin story for Cali. So I live in Cali, Colombia, population 2.5 million. It's the biggest city adjacent to the Pacific coast of Colombia, where Viche comes from.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Just to give an idea where Cali is, it's also so it's a Pacific coast of Colombia, and it's also a place where sugarcane grows a lot. There's a lot of ingenios where they produce sugarcane, they grow sugarcane, they harvest it, but basically it's mainly made for sugar, the sugar industry. When I first came to Colombia, I was like, okay, such a big sugarcane country, produces a lot of sugarcane, but there is no distillation. And then the first thing when someone travels to Colombia, it's always the same rums, Ron Medellín, Ron Viejo de Caldas. But you may discover Viche as well if you are someone who is looking for something different. So we are going to ask you directly what Viche is. But first I wanted to ask you what Vichería is. So you met these people and you got involved in this project. Can you maybe tell us more about La Vichería?
My good friends Sonia and Herman came to the idea of setting up La Vichería. First of all, the model of the Vichería is to help independent producers of Viche develop their brands and develop their commercial strategy and bring their product to the market. So it's what we call a negocio social. It's a social business whereby we go to the territories of the 4 departments where Viche is produced, and we select the best Viches and the Viche producers. And we create an alliance with them, and together we develop their brand, we develop their bottling, we develop their story, and then we present them to the market. We present them to bars and restaurant owners in Colombia and hopefully in the rest of the world as of next year. So the Vichería buys these galonetas at a competitive price. In the territory, they're shipped to us. That's a whole different story involving jungle and sea trips in open lanchas and open boats. and then a road trip to Cali where we do the bottling. So we go to the territories, we partner with them, they send us their galonetas, the big 20-gallon containers, and then we take care of the commercial side, and then we return a second payment to the producer. So there's a win-win economic aspect to this as well. And the third aspect is that we invest in social programs in those areas, in those communities, and we can get into that later. That's basically the model of the Vichería. We partner with producers. They earn well economically. At least that's the plan when we get Viche legalized finally this year.
Yeah, talking about Viche and legalization of Viche, it's a long way to get. To get to the situation we are today. Today, Viche is legal. It's protected by the government. It's also now it's possible to register it to INVIMA. I don't know how I can translate INVIMA in for
it's like the
TTB,
the Food and Drug Administration in the United States, the FDA.
Exactly, yes.
So authority.
Exactly. So once you have the INVIMA, you basically have the right to sell it in the country, within the country.
It's not that simple. It's a long, slow, and complicated process involving maybe 10 different steps, and it's difficult. It's new. The government have never done this before. They've taken all of the right first steps, which is inspiring. It's very encouraging to see what the government has done. But it's difficult. Tomorrow we're going to apply for another brand of Viche for the registro sanitario. It'll take hours, it's complicated, sometimes the website doesn't work, it's not straightforward, it's bureaucratic. And then there's estampillas, there's another process after that before we can even, and we have to change the labels on the bottles. There are a lot of steps and there are a lot of complication, but at the end of the day, we're going to be compliant with international standards and with national standards, and that's all fine. It's very important for us that the quality is guaranteed for the end consumer. There's reputation at stake, and so we're doing this the right way, I think.
Yeah, it's really complicated to get all these authorizations, especially with a new product. So why is it new? Can you explain maybe us where Viche comes from?
Sure.
And how did we get now to the situation where a certification is needed, basically?
Viche is not new. Viche is getting the recognition it deserves after, I guess, hundreds of years. So with origins in West Africa, through the slave trade to Colombia and the Caribbean, it has been produced for around 400 years in Colombia by the Afro-Colombian populations in the periphery, mostly in the Pacific coast of Colombia, in small communities that are very, very isolated. So the tradition is there of a distillate and also its derivatives. So there are maybe 7 or 8 derivatives of Viche. So Viche is the base. And so with the drink tradition, there's a medicinal and a functional tradition that's absolutely fascinating. That's not something that the Vichería is involved in. We're interested in pure Viche, clear Viche, and curao Viche that has some spices. But mostly it's pure Viche. So this has come about through popularity, and I think a trigger, a catalyst event for Viche and its popularity has been a music and cultural festival here in Cali called the Petroni Alvarez Festival that happens in mid-August every year. It's absolutely amazing, highly recommended. If you're coming to Cali, come for that festival, hands down. Probably the best event in Colombia every year. So producers, musicians, dancers come and compete and celebrate the culinary traditions, the functional medicinal traditions, the lore and the history of those communities comes to Cali every year for that. So I think in large part the popularity of Viche started there. I drank my first Viche maybe 16 years ago. I didn't enjoy it.
Oh, yeah.
It
Why not?
was,
Why not?
uh, I think that it was a mixture of different beaches. I don't know if the production values were as high as one would hope. It was it was at that festival, and maybe I wasn't prepared for it. Um, but it was interesting. And maybe 5 years ago, then when I met Sonia and Herman, and they told me about this idea that they had, I was all in. I love going to the territories. I've traveled quite widely there. I love visiting the communities. So, and I have a background in economic and social development. I studied this at university level. So I'm interested in mission-driven businesses.
Yeah, so talking about you were not prepared to taste Vice. Of course, it's not an easy spirit because it's completely different to what we can get on the market here in Colombia. It's not aged, so, and sometimes the alcohol strength is also high. So can you maybe, you have been to the territory, maybe you have seen how the process is. Can you maybe just explain to our audience how Vice is produced basically?
It's probably the most difficult drink to produce that I've ever heard of. If you take everything into account, the whole supply chain from, cutting the sugar cane. For example, Doña Mercedes, la maestra Doña Mercedes in Viruló, in Chocó, she travels upstream in a canoe by herself with her machete for several hours against the current. She spends 2 or 3 nights at her alote, her terrain where she grows her sugar cane. She sleeps on a plank floor in a shed. She works either alone or with an assistant for 3 days straight, rosando caña, so cleaning, cutting, preparing caña to bring it back to her distillation area. She piles up the canoe and she goes downstream. So that in itself is hand blisteringly difficult. It's extremely demanding. It's mostly women that do this work. So she brings it back to her distillation area. It's milled and the guarapo is extracted from the sugarcane. So it's put through a grinder, a mill. The guarapo is extracted, and then the guarapo is then filtered. Depending, methods change and techniques change, but generally speaking, there's a filtration process. Then it goes into the fermentation and boiling, and then into distillation, the alambique, which is the still, which varies as well. Some people use metal, but mostly and traditionally, it's a wood still over an open fire with bamboo and a metal pot at the top for the evaporation process to take place. So it's we have some photos on our website and some video, I think, in the Instagram page, but it's drop by drop by drop. It's a slow process. The fermentation, I should have added, fermentation period depends on who the producer is, but up to 2 weeks fermentation can take place. So water comes, generally speaking, on long tubes from up in the mountains down to the distillation area. They use plantain to seal some of the containers in the still. It's open wood fire over a furnace. It's quite rudimentary. It's completely organic. In a Vichería, it's one of the conditions we have is obviously that any pests or diseases are treated organically, that there's no synthetic or pesticide or herbicide ever used, and that's a standard that we have. So the end product then is a galloneta, a big container of 20 gallons that contains the Viche, and then it's either sold locally in the local communities, which is historically where most Viche has been sold. So in the last couple of years, and thanks to the Petronio Alvarez Festival that's maybe 20 years old, it's opening a new interest in Colombia initially, and now from further afield as more and more foreigners come to enjoy the Petronio Alvarez Festival.
So you were mentioning that the Viche is basically made for locals, for the community.
Yeah.
How is Viche used? Because when I was last year for La Vichería, when I came to visit you, and I remember you now that I saw you.
Remember you now.
Yeah. But we couldn't speak anyway. And so I was some Maestra Vichera. They were explaining us that they use it a lot also for medicine. So especially the Viche curado, el curao. Can you maybe, I don't know if you have some knowledge about how it's used, the Viche curado, and also Viche, let's say the Viche puro, how is it consumed by the locals in the community?
Okay, let's start with that second part. Viche is a sipping drink. It's used for occasions such as celebrations, the passing of loved ones. It's quite integral to the community. It's not a shot drink, it's not a high volume drink, it's a sipping drink. It's very exciting on the mouth. I'm not an expert, I'm not a sommelier, but there's a full oral experience, starting with the initial sip to a throat experience that people describe as grassy, or as exotic, as spicy even. It depends on the Viche and the Maestra or Maestro Vichero that produces it. So it's a sipping drink, it's for special occasions. And moving on to the first question, there are, like I said, 7 or 8 derivatives, each with their own purpose. So there's a lot of emphasis on sexual health, so on reproductive issues for women. So curao, for example, is often used for colic, for menstrual pain. There's pipilongo for male sexual health. There's tumbacatre, there's arrechon for pleasure. There are other uses for snake bites, for rheumatism, for muscular aches. So the applications vary, the functions vary quite a lot, but it tends to center around sexual health, reproductive health, and celebration. So it's a nice mix of events and moments and functions.
Yeah, because I was talking with a Maestra Vichera, and she told me that basically the community, it's not easy, for example, to these people to get to an hospital or to get to the first, first help. So they rely a lot on herbs and on local plants to get to, to heal themselves. So it's interesting to see how alcohol and herbs are mixed together. This happens everywhere, of course, also in other islands. And
there's another dimension there also, Renato, that is worth exploring, but probably not with me, is the spiritual side. So you have that combination of celebration and functional and spirituality and tradition that comes with Viche and its derivatives, that's been handed down mostly through the female line, through the gender. And that's really worth exploring as well. But it's not something that I'm an expert on.
Yeah, of course. This is, maybe we should talk with someone who is really into into the spirituality of Viche.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you about why is it important to protect Viche? I mean, yes, amazing. It was for a long time for locals in the community. What happened suddenly? Why was it important to protect Viche in 2000? I think it was in 2019.
That's right. Something. Yeah, that's right. The short answer is it's important to protect against exploitation and damaging the tradition. It's fundamental. So the trigger that caused this movement to happen or to accelerate was that somebody outside of these communities actually patented the word Viche, trademarked the word Viche. And that was an outrageous, bold move, obviously with commercial ends, but it would have disenfranchised hundreds of communities of the Pacific, because in these communities there's not a lot of economic activity. Viche is one of those core important activities, and for somebody outside of those communities to intercede and appropriate something using instruments of government such as patents and trademarks was an outrageous and move. So a lot of activism generated around that, and thankfully that was reversed. And then that spurred additional steps towards the 2021 Ley del Viche, which essentially ensures that this product can only be produced by these communities in those areas. So it prevents then, or makes it extremely difficult for industry to appropriate and take advantage of this tradition that's obviously should and will always belong to those communities. So technically speaking, there is what's called a denominación de origen y etnicidad. So there's an appellation of origin that is not just geographic, it's also ethnic, and I think it's probably the only appellation of that kind in the world. So this Viche and its derivatives can only be produced in those communities, in those territories, by these Afro-Colombian communities. And you have to show tradition. You can't just pop up and say one day, listen, I grew up in this village and now I'm a Vichero. That doesn't wash. And there's good protections there for that.
Yeah, because I know in 2019 it was a company, I think they were, I don't know exactly now, but they were from Medellin. Yeah. And Medellin is basically nothing to do with Viche. Yeah. And they saw there was certainly potential. They realized it, that was a lot. They could make money, and luckily they could protect it, which is really important because we know that in Colombia it's not really a big market and of rum. Yeah. There is rum, of course, but there is not that much maybe sugarcane protection. So it was important really for these people to get the right to produce their own product without anyone taking advantage of them.
Yeah. And in Colombia, it's not a well-known drink. I'd say the majority of people in my city of 2.5 million people have never heard of Viche. I've never tasted, never heard of it. And
you mean which city?
In Cali.
In Cali as well. Okay.
I would say the majority of people don't know it, and I'd even go so far as to say that there's a stigma attached to it because it's made from there by them in those territories in the jungle. So people have hang-ups about it. So where it's getting traction more than anywhere else is in fine bars and restaurants, hotels, hospitality, where people enjoy the experience of the drink, not just the taste of the drink, but the story, the narrative that comes behind it, and the folklore.
Yeah, it's a good point. Talking about also mixology, it's growing. The first time I discovered Viche was in Cartagena. It was in a restaurant called Carmen. You certainly know her, maybe. And she had a strange bottle of sugarcane. I mean, I asked what it was, and she told me, the barman told me, this is Viche, and this is made in the Pacific coast, and we use it a lot, he told me, in the mixology. So how is it going? How could you maybe compare it, mixology, say 5 years ago and now? Because after they legalized, or they started to protect Viche was also available more and more in the country, because I could get it, for example, for our restaurant in Cartagena. People could get it in Bogotá, in Medellin. Even I knew and I heard they were chasing down people selling Viche. Yeah. But this is another point. So how do you see the evolution Viche in the bartending?
It's certainly advancing. It's certainly advancing. Just to clarify, it's not legal. It's not legal to sell commercially. We're pre-legal, as I like to explain it. Um, but you can get it. There's certain Colombia has a paternalistic approach to alcohol, as I think you mentioned at the outset. So they control it and justify that control, that monopoly based on tax revenue. So we're taking tax revenue from alcohol, we're investing it in education, at the expense of consumer choice, at the expense of these communities who are making a great product that the whole world is going to enjoy, and we're seeing signs of that, early signs of that already. It's getting good traction and popularity. So on the one hand, there were a lot of decomisos, there were a lot of embargoes, there was a lot of capture of the product on the roads as it came to the cities. Some bars were closed down temporarily, where, I don't know, competition or people from the liquor industry in Colombia notified the authorities. So there were large periods of uncertainty about whether it's worth the risk of the bar owner, the restaurant owner, to offer this drink. It was more strict, or more jealous, as we say, más celoso in places like Medellin, and less so in Bogotá, and even less so in Cali. So we're seeing, like I said, the popularity is growing, the recognition is growing, as reflected in the law, as reflected in the discussions, and also the community is coming together. The Afro-Colombian community is coming together and talking about it and coordinating and understanding what's required to develop this as a mini ethnic industry that starts on the coast, tells a great story, has a great taste. There's no hangover, there's no methanol. So the mixologists we've got interest now from Canada, from the US, from the UK, from Europe, people who want the bottle. So I don't want to use the word smuggling, but we are seeing what we can do to spread the word and spread the bottles and give people a taste of this fantastic drink.
We are both member of the Speakeasy of Rare Spirit Society, and that's where I met you. And when you were talking about Viche, we saw there was a lot of reaction. People are interested. They show they had bottles, and so talking about the future of Viche, now that we had our first producer, Onésimo González Biojo, Viche Mano de Buey, that got the certification. He has INVIMA certification, which it's really great news. It's a small revolution in Colombia.
It's historic. And it's so great that he got it first.
Yeah, and he's really. I never met him personally, but I had talked to him a couple of times, once for the podcast, and he's really passionate and he's really carrying some, the tradition with him.
Yeah.
And he's really expressing it in a good Viche balance. I really liked his product. Anyway, how do you see now the future? Maybe once you said it, you need to get the certification to be allowed to export it. What would the next step be? Do you think that the small producer can do it alone, or they need maybe support of you? How would you see that?
I think the most important point to make to the listeners is that this is a small batch industry. This is not going to turn into a community or producer producing more than 5,000, 10,000 liters a month. This is probably a selection of 100 or fewer producers in Colombia making 1,000 to 5,000 liters a month maximum. So the volume will probably inform the growth. Therefore, the growth isn't going to be that rapid. I think it'll be very select. I hope it will be premium. Obviously, there will be mass market versions of Viche as well. My hope would be is that it would be producer driven. So it isn't a bland, vanilla, generalist brand, but it is made by La Chola or Doña Mercedes or Doña Ana in such and such a village. And so the protagonist should be the producer, because they're the people with the tradition. They're the people with the history. They're the people with the skills, with the recipes. So I hope that would be to the forefront of this industry, rather than being co-opted by, I don't know, Diageo or Bacardi or somebody. That would be terrible conclusion or result. I think that it will probably become more popular outside of Colombia before it becomes popular inside Colombia. I think that the recognition will come because of its purity, because of its taste, because of its versatility for cocktail making, as well as purist drinkers will come from interest from abroad, and that will inform what happens in Colombia.
It's maybe also what happened with a small producer like Haiti. There is a product which is called Clara, which is also basically, it's ancestral, or it's made maybe mainly for the communities. And there's also an Italian broker, if I can say so, Velier. Look, and who knows? I don't know. Maybe who knows in the world there is maybe someone who one day travels to Colombia. He discovers it. He has this approach. He doesn't want to. I mean, yes, of course, making money, of course, is always because someone produces something, but produce it in small quantities, in a high-end, as a high-end product. This is certainly possible. The only thing
there's one point I want to mention. That's it was very fortunate, the timing of the Ley del Viche. When we've been to the villages that produce Viche, and just to illustrate what that's like, you can take a small aircraft to Nuki, and then you take an open lancha, an open boat with an outboard motor, and you go down the coast for hours and hours and hours, and you go into mangroves to visit a village where there's no electricity. The lifestyle is very basic. It's very rudimentary, and the majority of the producers of Viche are quite elderly. So if the Ley del Viche was not to have happened in 2021, what we were seeing and it's easy to predict is that the youth aren't going to adopt the tradition, aren't going to extend their tradition, because it's not interesting for them. They want to go to the city. This is something from the old world that they would abandon. So now what's happening is that hopefully and soon this will become economically interesting, without becoming economically overpowering in such a way that it changes the nature, the composition of the villages, and that the tradition continues. So the timing was very appropriate, very positive.
I met the son of Doña Sophie. If I'm not wrong, it was the son. Yes, exactly. And he's young. I don't know how old it is, but he is learning how to make Viche, and it's nice to see the energy and the passion he wants to transmit. Because also talking with Onesimo, he told me that I don't know if his sons are going to continue, or he was hoping that his sons would continue one day, because it's maybe hard work, it's not for everyone, and sometimes it's difficult to continue with the tradition. So if there's also an economic part which is going to support these people, of course it's important. Talking about mass production, because I heard some people would say that Viche may be the next mezcal of Colombia. This is completely wrong.
I don't think the volume will. I don't know. I'm not an expert. I don't think the volume will be there. I think what might happen is that people will sell pre-mixed products that contain Viche with maracuya, or Viche with other tropical fruits. So it's a pre-mixed drink, like one of the Smirnoff drinks. I think that might happen. So I think there are opportunities, but I don't think this is going to be a mass market drink, because you don't want to change the social fabric of the communities I think, in any significant way. I think you want to improve quality of life. You want to guarantee the tradition continues. But at the end of the day, I'm an Irish guy living in Cali. I'm not even from the country originally. I'm not from the city originally. It's up to the communities and the producers to decide,
Of course.
individually and collectively, the route and the future of their tradition. That's the way I put it.
Exactly. I forgot to mention that Viche is only produced in 4 departments of Colombia on the Pacific coast, so Chocó, Valle del Cauca, and Nariño. These 4 departments, and so it's pretty big. But again, it's not industrialized part, the less maybe industrialized part of Colombia. A lot of, how can I say, remote places, not easy to travel within the region. So also imagine a mass production there is impossible. It's impossible to do that. And yeah, again, it's not the idea behind the spirit of Viche. Yeah. Again, it's something which is linked to the local community.
Very much so.
Viche, I also forgot to ask you exactly what the meaning. What does Viche mean? If you remember, I think it's an African.
Yeah, it's from Bantu. I understand it's from the Bantu culture from West Africa. I don't actually know.
Because there is people, they think that Viche in Colombia, Viche means unripe. So a mango Viche, for example,
it's used like that. It's used like that, but I don't think that's the original foundation or stem.
That's why sometimes people think that Viche is made with unripe sugarcane, but it's not possible, because of course sugarcane has to be ripe in order to be, how do you say, contain enough sugar.
That's correct.
For the alcohol production.
Yeah. I mean, also what's interesting about Viche and the production is the differentiation between the different Viches that are produced in each area. So there are a couple of factors that go into that. One is the strain or the variety of the sugarcane. There are 4 or 5 varieties that are traditionally used. The altitude, the proximity to the sea versus a river, the water source, and the general environment. I make bread and I make some beer at home, so I use a lot of yeast. In the jungle, there's wild yeast. So the atmosphere, the conditions, the humidity all combine to producing a different flavor profile in the Viche. So the time used, or the recipes used, the time used for fermentation, all of these things combine to add different flavor profiles to different Viches that are distinguishable.
It's such unique because, again, when I was at Vichería, Maestra Vichería was explaining that where she's growing the sugarcane in Chocó, it's maybe more rainy. It rains more than other regions, so they have lower bricks, which means less sugar, and she needs to cook the guarapo, the juice, for longer in order to get the concentration. But it's not the same. Maybe say in Nariño, I'm just saying that now, maybe it's drier there and they don't need to cook it that long. So also this is so interesting to see the same sugarcane, the same plant, but in different way of producing, of cooking the juice. And also, of course, the yeast, everything is natural there, so the natural yeast you can get in one region will not be the same in another region.
Exactly. And the seasons matter. But one word about the territories. This is a vast expanse of territory on the Pacific coast of Colombia. Speaking about rain, I think after Borneo, it has the second most rainfall in the world. I think around 8 to 10 meters of rain per year, so it's literally always raining. Access is by boat rather than car. There are maybe 1 or 2 roads, 3 roads, but for the most part this is jungle meets beach meets sea, and often it's jungle meets black sand beaches meets vast expanses of ocean. And on that coast as well, there are sectors where there are lots of mangroves, mature mangroves. It's an absolutely spectacular place to visit. So hopefully some of the listeners and viewers will take a chance
Yeah.
someday and come visit Colombia and go to visit those areas. Absolutely amazing.
The only problem, I'm not saying problem, but I see a lot with the tourists I work with. Don't have time. So normally when they come to Colombia, they go Medellin, Cartagena.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I saw it more Europeans. They like to travel. They are more adventurous.
Intrepid.
So yeah, and I never been. Shame on me to the. Yes, I've been to Cali, but I never been further down, like Buenaventura. I would like to go to the Pacific side, Nuki, if I'm not wrong, the name
Yeah.
Nuki. It's amazing.
Go to
The
visit
best-
Don Diego, who lives in Guachalito, just south of Nuki. It's a 20-minute boat ride. He's got a beach. He produces viche,
Okay,
son de
amazing.
caña, and if you're lucky, the whales are visible from the shoreline, from
Yeah.
his
So
lair.
exactly, I wanted to mention the special mention about the whales. They are you can spot them. I think it's in summer, so say from July or June to
June to
September.
October.
Okay,
June
yeah.
to October. Yeah, absolutely spectacular to hear them under the water, to see them on a few hundred meters from shore. It's absolutely incredible.
Yeah, yeah. It's something that I should do. By the way, I'm leaving, going back to Switzerland. But I will tell you later about that.
Okay.
So next time I will come to Colombia. I already said we planned this with my wife. We have to go because it's amazing. It's something that people have to do to see. And again, it's not easy to get there. It's more remote zone, but it's the authentic Colombia, obviously.
Yeah.
It's really authentic there.
Absolutely amazing.
Yeah, Johnny, I don't know if I forgot something. Yeah, I want to ask you about the stills, the distilling machines. So we know there is a producer which is producing in Nariño, if I'm not wrong. He invested some money to buy a new machine, a new still there. How do you see that? Is this something that it's doable for more producer, or it's because it's a lot of money? It's maybe, I don't know, what's your take?
I think I think at the end of the day, what will make Viche popular is the story, and I think what people will be drawn to and attracted to are traditional artisanal methods rather than like pre-industrial or quasi-industrial production using aluminium or whatever the method is used in. It depends what you relate to best. I think if you're a bartender or mixologist in Tokyo or London or Miami or New York or San Francisco, and you want to tell a great story, you want to show pictures of the production of the Maestra Vichería, who lives on an island in Virulo, Choco, and who nurtures her open fire and has traditional methods. It's a better story. It's something that people, I think, would like to relate to more than something that is sterile or more professional, let's say, more industrial. So I think there'll be horses for courses. I think some people will go with the more industrial methods and some people will stick with the traditional methods.
Yeah.
I don't know what the analogy would be, maybe in Scotland or elsewhere.
Yeah, I saw some picture of the machines, stills they use. They're really homemade. They're really, and that's also what gives to the product is authenticity. This typical flavor profile they get there, and maybe trying to get it too industrial, you would lose some authenticity, maybe.
Yeah, it's inevitable. I think there will be a lot of variation, and hopefully that'll be reflected in good taste variation or differentiation across the producers as well.
Just to conclude, I have a last question for you. What's your next, or what's going on in La Vichería? Have you any project maybe with the producer? Since now you have the possibility to export Viche as well.
We're in the process, the long, slow, bureaucratic process of of registering for the FDA, the Health and Sanitation Authority, before we can export. But a large part, or an important part of what the Vichería does also is we invest in programs in the community. So for example, we received a donation from some friends to design stoves and production areas that contaminate less. So a big issue with the people who produce Viche is that there's a lot of smoke, not a lot of ventilation. So there are respiratory issues, there are eyesight issues, there are eye diseases. So with a view to making a sensible intervention, we're working with local maestros or builders, local materials, to come up with a design that requires less firewood, more constant temperatures, less wood smoke, and less negative health impacts on the producers. So that's something that we are going to, we're in the process of building the first one, and we hope to share that design with other communities so it can be replicated.
Yeah.
So that's one of our activities in addition to everything else. And
yeah, I never thought about that.
Worth noting that this is a very, very difficult business. Just to get a gallonetta Viche from Liosaiha, it requires hours and hours and hours in an open boat down the river, up the coast, into the port, along the road to get to Cali before we can run our own tests, our own quality assurances, and before we bottle and present it to customers. So it's a very, very fascinating story. It's a very fascinating business. It's really difficult, starting with the cultivation of sugarcane and the cosecha, the harvesting of sugarcane, right to getting it to a consumer in Bogotá, Medellin, or London, Tokyo, or Milan.
Yeah,
it's a long and fascinating story.
And I saw also on your social media, on Instagram, you offer also tastings, Viche tastings, Vichería. When does it happen? Is it open to everyone?
From time to time, we have catas in Cali, in San Fernando. It's open to anybody. We like to get some advance bookings if possible, so we can coordinate a little bit. Sometimes we put on music, we have snacks, and a maestra, Vichera, can come and talk about the production, talk about the tradition. Yeah, we've done this on a number of occasions. It's a lot of fun.
I will link all the. I will put the website, your Instagram. Where can people contact you if they are traveling Cali to maybe visit you? Is it possible?
Absolutely. We can provide some advice on where to visit in the territories as well, not just visit Cali. Very important to see this being produced in the communities.
So yes, if you are in Cali and you like spirits, you want to taste Viche, yes, you can taste it in different cities. The biggest cities, Bogotá, Medellin, Cartagena. But yeah, if you are in Cali, you can't miss La Vichería. And they really have a nice selection of bottles, really nice designs. And yeah, you can buy bottles there, you can make tasting, and you can get, maybe if you're lucky, you can also meet a maestro or a maestra Vichera and have a drink with them.
And consider coming in August. Consider coming for the festival in mid-August.
San Petronio.
It will be the best best event you'll ever have experienced. Very good.
Okay, Johnny, thank you very much for your time.
My pleasure, Nato.
I hope to meet you soon. Next time we'll be in Cali. I will tell you in advance.
Por favor.
Yeah, salud. And
bueno,
until next time.
Gracias.
Thank you very much.
Estamos en contacto.
Estamos en contacto. Ciao, Johnny. Ciao.